The ability to travel through time, to change your past, to see the future. It's been a dream of mankind for thousands of years, but the truth may be more than just fantasy. There is evidence that time travel is not only real, but exists today, controlled by an elite few in the present and visitors from the future. It is a power great enough to affect every life on our planet.
If you travel back in time and you bump into somebody on the sidewalk or step on an ant, that the butterfly effect tells you that that in itself could alter humanity and alter history.
But what happens when it falls into the wrong hands?
What if somebody goes back in time before the evolution of the human race? What if they altered one species of animals that plays a role in our evolution, but we just don't know that connection? Those little types of effects could absolutely wipe out the human race altogether. It kind of sounds far-fetched, but if you think about it, those little types of changes, if you were able to achieve time travel, could potentially wipe us all out.
From catastrophic weapons of war to cryptic messages from the future. Tonight, we explore the greatest power of our entire existence. Join us as we unseal the secrets of time travel. What if the history you were taught in school was all a lie? Is our government controlled by a secret society? Welcome to the world of conspiracy, where cover-ups, secrets, and hidden agendas all trace back to a single source. We're about to unseal the secret files the government doesn't want you to... 1941. War is raging in Europe. America has yet to join the fray. In Gold Bridge, British Columbia, the South Fork Bridge is about to reopen after repairs. Hundreds of citizens show up to witness the event.
In one photo released by a Canadian archive, there was a photograph taken on a reopening of a bridge. Now, what they did was they took a photograph of the entire crowd that was watching, and in the middle was this man that was completely out of place. From almost head to almost toe that you could see, it didn't line up.
He is mysteriously out of place, holding clues that he may be a man out of time. Could this photo reveal evidence of a time traveler? The person in question has a unique hairstyle compared to those around him. His sunglasses seem futuristic for the 1940s. And under a hooded sweatshirt, he appears to be wearing a silkscreen t-shirt. 20 years before the garment screen printer was even invented. But the most damning evidence of all could be what this strange man holds in his hands. What appears to be a modern camera, sleeker, more compact than anything of its day.
So from head to toe, this gentleman just did not fit the time frame that the photograph was taken. Now, it was put on the internet by this archive, not expecting the reaction from the public. It spread like wildfire through the internet as proof that time travel exists.
But who is he? Perhaps this is a question that could only be answered by a fellow time traveler. Seattle attorney Andrew Basiago claims to have traveled through time and space as a participant in a secret government program. Recruited as a child, Basiago supports his time travel declaration with this evidence, a photograph taken in 1863, which he claims shows him as a boy at the Gettysburg Address. According to Basiago, in the late 1970s, the CIA partnered with DARPA to develop a top-secret jump room in El Segundo, California. The alleged facility enables humans to bend the space-time continuum at will. This device would have allowed instantaneous travel outside our planet, and even through time itself. If his claims are true, the CIA not only experimented with, but built operable time machines. This would allow an unrivaled power to control the destiny of the human race. While it may sound like science fiction, there is evidence that the U.S. government did obtain the technology and that it came from the same source as our modern rocketry science. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis.
Many people believe that the ultimate Wunderwaffe, the ultimate superweapon of the Nazi regime, would have been time travel. Imagine if Adolf Hitler and all of the people around him were able to achieve such a piece of technology. Imagine what that could do in respect to the war itself.
Coming up next, the most shocking tale of Hitler's time machine isn't when it disappeared, but when it reappeared 20 years later. If possible, time travel would change the very nature of our reality. The power to control history is the power to control the present and the future. Could we prevent it from falling into the wrong hands? Or is it already too late? Unsealed case file, the Nazi Bell. Toward the end of World War II, Allied forces were invading Germany. Nazi airfields were bombed beyond repair. Hitler was seeking technology to launch aircraft not dependent on runways. What he got may have turned into the most powerful weapon in history, a device known as Die Glocke, or the Bell. After the war, an underground research facility was discovered. It was carved nearly 1,000 kilometers into the Sudeten Mountains. In these caverns, some believe Hitler's army developed his ultimate wonder weapon.
Die Glocke was purportedly a bell-shaped device that stood up to 15 feet tall. And it's been said that 5 of Hitler's top scientists may have died while working on that project. And those sacrifices mean that Hitler thought he was onto something.
And here was their technology that used counter-rotating cylinders of a very heavy metal, liquid metal, called red mercury. And by spinning them, by counter-rotating them at furiously high speeds, it generated an intense field of radioactivity. And that became the power source for these weapons, counter-rotating fields of mercury.
Experts believe Die Glocke may have originally been designed to power the Flytrap, an alleged launch pad for experimental Nazi aircraft.
Reports say that the Flytrap was used to launch anti-gravity aircraft. If the Nazis had actually developed anti-gravity aircraft, there's no way the Allies would have been able to keep up.
But some believe Die Glocke may have had a greater purpose for the Nazis, one that could make them the most unstoppable army in the history of time.
Some of the stories about this device describe that it had a mirror on top of it that allegedly allowed one to see images from the past.
It is theorized Die Glocke would need to generate 100 million watts of electricity, enough to warp electrogravitational fields, thus creating an opening in time.
One of the theories about Die Glocke as a time travel piece of technology is that it would create a torsion field around the Nazi bell. Whatever this piece of technology was, it would create this torsion field or this energy bubble, and that it would actually alter the 4 dimensions in the unified field theory. We know the 3 dimensions that you and I talk, walk, and interact in, but the 4th dimension being time itself. That what this torsion field does in conjunction with the Nazi bell is distort all of that and allow us to go forwards and backwards in time to change history.
If this is possible, Hitler would have at his disposal a time machine.
How would it have traveled in time? By creating vortices, they could shoot themselves through, pull space-time around them.
So operate off the assumption that the Nazi bell was a time machine and Hitler was able to actually create it. If he could just go into this object and go back to any point in time that he would want to, would be unstoppable. He can, in essence, do whatever he wanted, save Nazi Germany, and really fulfill his world domination desire.
But in 1945, the Nazi regime was defeated.
We will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God.
Before his death, Hitler allegedly ordered the bell's destruction. Was the world's first time machine lost in the fog of war? Or was it used as the Nazis' final escape?
In December 1965, over 20 years after Die Glocke disappeared, a strange bell-shaped craft heavy with radioactivity and glowing blue swept over the American border from Canada, over Michigan, over Ohio, making long S-curves and slowly coming to a controlled crash landing outside of Kecksburg, Pennsylvania.
Witnesses, interviewed by the local papers, reported a large crashed object nearly identical in description to the Nazi bell. They also claimed that a group of American soldiers arrived on the scene. Using a flatbed truck, the soldiers are said to have loaded the object and taken it away.
Almost instantly, a unit of American soldiers who wore no insignia and came with a flatbed truck were there to retrieve this object and take it away. People were warned, keep your mouth shut. Don't talk about this.
Could this tale confirm the true purpose of Die Glocke?
Did Die Glocke disappear in time, landing 20-plus years later in Pennsylvania, and then being taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, where for all we know, it sits there today, our own American time machine.
Coming up next, the incredible story of an unlikely encounter with humans from the future and the shocking message they left behind. Could the human race really discover how to travel through time? And if they could, have they done so already? History has left tantalizing clues that time travel is possible.
One piece of evidence that many claim is proof of time travel are ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. That on the walls of some Egyptian temples and in their artwork are symbols that actually represent what we would call today as airplanes, as helicopters, as blimps, as pieces of technology that they didn't have in ancient Egypt, and yet they were drawing it on their walls. Many ask, how did they know? Is this proof that they themselves were able to travel through time, maybe see the 21st century technology that they chronicled on a temple wall? Was that technology able to travel back in time? I mean, there's a lot of theories on what it could mean.
But even more compelling is a message seemingly brought to us from the future.
On December 26, 1980, security personnel from RAF Bentwaters in the UK went out into Rendlesham Forest to investigate a series of lights where radar said an aircraft might have gone down.
Upon entering the forest, Sergeant Jim Peniston and his partner, John Burroughs, encounter a strange aircraft that lands right before their eyes. They approach the craft, and Sergeant Peniston places his hand on the surface. As he does, Peniston is frozen while a mysterious code is beamed into his mind. A telepathic communication.
I had an explosion of white light where I couldn't see. I was blinded. And I started seeing ones and zeros flashing. I mean, it was like inside my mind's eye.
Peniston is shaken by his contact with the craft and the vision it leaves behind. But even more incredible, John Burroughs maintains a different memory of the event entirely.
I do not remember seeing Jim walk around the craft. I do not remember touching the craft. What I clearly remember was we got close to something, and the next thing I know, it appeared to go up into the sky and then shoot out towards the coast.
Afterwards, the two soldiers realize that the times on their synchronized watches are off by almost 45 minutes.
When John Burroughs and Jim Peniston returned to base, it transpired that more time had elapsed than they realized. Moreover, there was discrepancy in their wristwatches. Time, it seemed, not only had run on, but had maybe run at different speeds for them. Now this takes us to some quite extraordinary territory, but when you talk to both John and Jim, and indeed to people who looked at this case, some quite extraordinary theories are being bounced around, ideas of time travel.
How could the contact with this strange craft cause a bend in time? According to Peniston, the answer is hidden within the coded message. For decades, this series of ones and zeros remained a mystery. But 30 years after the incident, Jim Burroughs was examining the code and realized what Peniston had received.
As we were going through the book, he came to some pages that had zeros and ones on it. I looked at it and I said, these are binary codes.
The team had the code deciphered, revealing a shocking message. Exploration of humanity. Then latitude and longitude coordinates. Continuous for planetary advance. Peniston had long suspected that the UFO he had seen in the woods was alien in origin, but the coordinates within the code indicated a different explanation. They fell on the location of a forgotten island off the coast of Ireland, known as High Brazil.
High Brazil has sometimes been dubbed Celtic Atlantis. It's a sort of lost land, a mythical country, as it were, that some believed was the site of an advanced civilization. According to legends, those who have seen High Brazil reported a land filled with an advanced and wealthy civilization whose architecture consisted of golden towers and majestic domes.
What Jim Peniston initially believed to be a message from the stars turned out to be a mysteriously earthly communication. And the most shocking detail was the postscript on this code.
The message on the page says date of origin 8100.
Date of origin 8100. Could this signature be telling us the year these travelers had come from?
Why would a race that traveled thousands of light years play hide and seek with us, give us a binary message, and why is it in English? It doesn't point to alien. What I seen was a craft that was us from the future. This is not about UFOs. What I believe had happened, what I seen was a craft that was us from the future.
Time travelers from the future. We may not yet understand their communication, but if Jim Peniston is correct, this cryptic message confirms that mankind has survived well into the future, and that we have harnessed the power to control time itself. Since man first looked to the sky thousands of years ago, he has wondered, are we alone in the universe?
Carl Sagan said there were billions and billions of stars, so it would be crazy for us to think that with all the planets and stars out there, we were the only form of intelligent life in the entire universe.
NASA has confirmed the existence of more than 450 planets outside our solar system. The biggest obstacle to contacting life on these planets? How do we get there?
So, for example, the star system Alpha Centauri is 4.5 light years away. We were able to use conventional rockets that could travel at, say, 5% of the speed of light. It would still take thousands of years to get there.
Experts think there might be another way, a secret method to unlocking instantaneous travel to any point in the universe, and it might have existed for centuries. Join us as we unseal the conspiracy behind Stargate. Baghdad, 2003. American and British troops invade Iraq. The night sky turns to day as hundreds of bombs find their targets. Tanks roll down city streets. In a few short weeks, the Iraqi military is crushed. The mission is said to be accomplished, yet American troops remain there for more than a decade. Some experts have a shocking theory why U.S. soldiers remained for so long.
Iraq has long been known as the location of one of the oldest stargates on planet Earth.
The history of the Iraqi Stargate goes back more than 6,000 years.
For a civilization that was essentially coming right out of the Stone Ages, they were very highly advanced.
Chariots, tools, irrigation, weapons. In just a few hundred years, Sumerians advanced the species more than the previous 200,000 years combined.
The Sumerian culture is supposedly responsible for giving us a lunar calendar, arithmetic, even some of the first bits of literature written on stone tablets.
How did the ancient Sumerians create such wonders?
One of the theses that was put forward was that the ancient Sumerians were in fact a civilization that had been assisted by a race of extraterrestrials called the Anunnaki, and that the Anunnaki provided them with advanced technology.
Anunnaki is roughly translated as those who fell from the heavens.
So how did the Anunnaki cross the vast interstellar distance between their home world and Earth? One theory: stargates.
One of these technologies was the ability to be able to travel through space-time using these technologies called stargates.
The theory behind how a stargate works is that it's a wormhole or vortex that connects 2 points in space together, kind of like folding a piece of paper over.
And some people think they're everywhere.
Probably anywhere between 10 to 20 for around the world altogether.
In southern Peru, a mysterious civilization that predates the Incas built the Puerta de Ayumarca, or Gateway of the Gods.
There's a stargate near the city of Puno, Peru, which is on the edge of Lake Titicaca. It basically is built into what appears to be a cliff face, and it looks like a very large doorway.
There is a legend that one of the priests of the Incas was being chased by the Spanish conquistadors, and he fled into a stargate, into a portal, and simply disappeared from this plane of reality.
In neighboring Bolivia, another ancient people built the gateway to the sun more than 2,000 years before the rise of the Incan Empire.
The Gateway of the Sun Stargate in Bolivia was built by the Tiwanaku civilization. It's located on the shores or nearby Lake Titicaca on the top of the Bolivian plateau there. This doorway to the sun was a means by which the Tiwanakan civilization believed that they could interact or enter into the energies of the sun.
Pictographs and sculptures throughout the pyramids of Egypt depict the coming of gods from the stars who arrived and left long ago. What they left behind was a legacy of advanced technology, architecture, and culture the likes of which had never been seen before.
What evidence is there that advanced technology was delivered to the Egyptians through technologies such as stargates?
Well, the evidence we have is evidence from the hieroglyphics themselves that seem to indicate that there were places on planet Earth where they call them gods could easily transport themselves between their plane of reality, whatever universe they lived in, and our plane of reality.
Would these advanced beings send ambassadors of peace? Or would they transport advanced weapons that would make our largest nuclear missiles seem like firecrackers by comparison?
Imagine what the human race could do with such an incredible technology as a Stargate. Worse, imagine what we would do with it.
A Stargate in the wrong hands could spell disaster for all mankind. And some believe the most evil force on Earth may have already found one. Coming up, did the Nazis really find a working Stargate? It's theorized that Stargates are portals which allow interplanetary travel over unimaginable distances. And many think Adolf Hitler may have located just such a gateway.
Hitler became obsessed with the theory of the lost land of Thule.
The land of Thule was an underground or a subterranean civilization inhabited by these Nordic-looking giants who had tremendous abilities, and very importantly, they also had very sophisticated, very advanced technologies.
It was first described by the ancient Greeks, who equated it with the lost civilization of Atlantis.
One of the myths about an ancient Aryan civilization was that this civilization inhabited a warm region beneath the surface of Antarctica.
In 1938, before World War II is in full swing, Hitler sends German ships to Antarctica under the pretense of establishing a whaling base. Many historians believe he has far different motives.
If Hitler was really interested in whaling, then why send U-boats and other war machines down to Antarctica? It doesn't make any sense, unless he was going there for another reason.
Nazi Germany was convinced that Atlantis was actually buried underneath the Antarctic ice.
The philosophical Nazis were looking for some kind of validation for the supremacy of what they call the Aryan race, specifically for that portal that brought the Aryans to planet Earth. They were looking for a Stargate.
In 1939, the Nazi expeditions pay off. They establish an Antarctic base they name New Swabia. As World War II rages on, the Nazis allegedly continue to make frequent trips to the base.
With the Soviets closing in on the Eastern Front and the Allies closing in from the West, you would think the German Wehrmacht would be totally occupied with defending the fatherland instead of sending these naval expeditions to Antarctica.
After the Germans are defeated in 1945, reports of the Nazi base in Antarctica continue. 1 year after the surrender, the United States launches its own expedition to this frozen land. Unsealed case file, Operation High Jump.
Operation High Jump, 1946 to 1947, was a large naval expedition under the command of Admiral Byrd that went to Antarctica, ostensibly to visit the mini colony of New Swabia. The cover story was that they were simply mapping it.
What the Americans allegedly found there defied description. Reports of advanced rocket technology, anti-gravity experiments, and even high-tech flying saucers are unconfirmed.
Some people believe that there was evidence of genetic experiments an entire decade before DNA was even discovered.
What we do know, Operation High Jump was abruptly canceled months before its scheduled completion date. Admiral Richard Byrd expressed his fear of fast objects flying from pole to pole at incredible speeds.
Whatever it is that the American government found in Antarctica, we'll never know.
During World War II, physicist Wernher von Braun is one of the most prominent scientists of the Nazi Party. He develops the V-2 rocket, a ballistic missile that causes brutal destruction in the final years of the war.
In less than 4 years, the Nazis go from firing artillery shells to having radio-guided rockets.
Where did the Nazis get such technology at a time when wars were fought without guidance systems, smart bombs, or satellites?
A lot of people theorize that this was accomplished using alien technology that may have been brought through the Stargate. There were huge advancements in technology in World War II, but none of it even compared to what Operation High Jump was reported to find in New Swabia.
After the war, von Braun's technical wizardry was used to create America's first ballistic missile, its first jet fighter, and was responsible for the launch of America's space program.
As frightening as the potential technology of New Swabia might have been, even more frightening is the alleged discovery of an ancient Stargate in Iraq.
When we return, the desperate rush to secure the Iraqi Stargate will be revealed.
Saddam Hussein, with Stargate technology in his hands, there's no way our government would have sat around and let that happen.
Current theory on the Iraqi Stargate places the device beneath the ancient Sumerian city of Ur, the first great city of the world. It is also the site of the Sumerians' grandest temple, called the Great Ziggurat.
In 1922, the British explorer Woolley was sent to Iraq to explore the ancient city of Ur for artifacts. But legend has it that what Woolley found was not just an ancient city, but an entire ancient complex, possibly housing a Stargate.
Just as Woolley is not the first to explore the temple in modern times, he is also not the last. In the early 1980s, Saddam Hussein orders a massive restoration project at the Great Ziggurat, effectively transforming the temple into a fortress.
The Ziggurat of Ur is purportedly where Saddam worked on his biochemical weapons. It became the center of his operations, and he even put an Air Force base there.
Experts say 3 massive staircases leading into the temple were restored by Saddam, and not just to allow for easier access. They were also built to carry things out. Things like the Iraqi Stargate.
The real reason the United States launched the preemptive strike against Iraq in 2003 was because Saddam Hussein had gotten into his hands some of these technologies, such as Stargates. That's when the US political elite became very worried that Saddam Hussein would go public about his discoveries.
Critics of the war in Iraq speculate the real reason for America's involvement is to secure Iraq's oil supply for future use. But all the oil in the world pales in comparison to unlimited access to advanced alien technology.
Whether you loved or hated Bush, we may have all been wrong about the reasons for going to war.
Another piece of startling evidence, one of the most elite naval units in military history, known as Task Force 20, is dispatched in 2003 with the mission to find and terminate high-profile enemy targets in Iraq.
They were approximately 1,500 of the military's finest special forces people, and their job in Iraq after the invasion in 2003 was essentially to find Saddam Hussein according to the public record.
But the unit's priorities raise questions. Early on in the invasion, Task Force 20 engages in a vicious firefight with Iraqi soldiers, not at a military target, but at the National Museum of Iraq.
Why would the U.S. government spend so many resources trying to get to the National Museum of Iraq? And why was the Iraqi Republican Guard there defending it?
Task Force 20, it had multiple missions, but its more secret mission was really to scour all of Iraq's ancient sites, all of Iraq's museums for any information.
They were looking for evidence to support that the Stargate was at the Great Ziggurat of Ur.
American forces made the Great Ziggurat the site of one of their most important air bases for the next 9 years.
We stayed in Iraq for 10 years, long after Saddam Hussein was overthrown, ostensibly to help the Iraqis build a new government. But could it have been that it took us an entire decade to dismantle the Stargate and ship it back to the United States because of that technology, and that was the reason we stayed in Iraq until 2012?
If they did dismantle the Iraqi Stargate and took it back to the U.S., it could be in any number of secret government warehouses, Area 51, Wright-Patterson, even Fort Knox. The thing could be anywhere.
Theorists see evidence of Stargates in every technological explosion in human history. Ancient texts and hieroglyphs seem to verify their suspicions.
From the Wright brothers' first powered flight and NASA's landing on the moon, less than 70 years, and now NASA has a rover crawling across the surface of Mars looking for life.
Believers in Stargates argue such a great leap in science and technology over such a short amount of time simply cannot be explained by traditional thinking.
The advantages of a military or a civilization that controlled a Stargate would be enormous. They would be able to transport people and equipment through vast distances of time and space.
Coming up, the dangers of a Stargate, once found, are almost too great to conceive.
If an enemy had a Stargate and was able to utilize it in a war against us, we could be snuffed out of existence in less than a second.
Experts worry the opening of a Stargate could have terrifying consequences for a civilization as relatively primitive as our own.
If Stargates were built by a race of extraterrestrials to enable them to traverse vast distances, what chance do we have of manipulating that technology?
We'd be like infants playing with a nuclear bomb.
The main concern is that no matter who attempts to open the Stargate, the end result could spell disaster for all mankind.
That would be very, very dangerous for a Stargate to be opened prematurely like that without knowing who would be coming through.
An out-of-control wormhole might pull the Earth through a Stargate, piece by painful piece.
What if we created a black hole right here on planet Earth and we snuffed ourselves out of existence without even realizing what we were about to do?
It would be as if we never existed.